Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, and of course on our main stage, intellectualradio.com. And we are grateful for us the platform every Monday night to come to you with the issues that are faced or that our communities are faced with in the African American diaspora, whether it be in Chicago, whether it be in Cook County, whether it be in the state of Illinois, or whether it be around the country. Because I'm going to be talking about some things that are happening in other spaces of Black communities around the country later on this evening. Specifically, down where I am from, small town, but a powerful town. A powerful people in Richmond Heights, West Perrine, Goulds. I'm going to talk about that coming up a little bit later on in the program. So I want you all to come on in and join in, and you can leave your comments in the chat. Certainly want to know what your thoughts are about some of the things or all of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. I want to hear what you have to say about some of the things or all of the things. Now, I must warn you that all of the opinions and the positions expressed through this broadcast are solely those of the host and facilitator, and I take full responsibility for them. So there may be some comments that you hear me say tonight that you may have not heard me say when I was on terrestrial radio, but you're going to hear, and you probably haven't heard me say them here. But I'm pretty full tonight, and I have been for a while, about some things that are happening and about the people who have been the gatekeepers, the sellouts, the compromised, to be pastors, preachers, Black folks who, for their own individual gain, personal gain, that they would compromise the principle of what's right and righteous to sell their community out for a bowl of beans. I'm going to be talking about that, and I'm going to be talking about a few other things. And also, I'll be talking about these people who keep calling me about RFK and suggesting this. Let me make this very clear. I want you to be very clear. I don't want anybody to be ignorant. As the scripture says, that the scripture doesn't want for us to be ignorant. I don't want for you to be ignorant. I want you to understand. I support the Biden-Harris administration for the presidency of the United States of America for 2025, or in the 2024 election to go into 2025. Not because I have some loyalty to the Democratic Party. It happens to be the party that we can best get things done for our community and for the broader part of the country. We're not even talking about perfection. We're not even talking about that. So I'm going to get into this, and I just want you to bring your other people in. Okay, I want you to bring your other people in. Let me just shut down the intro music there. But let me just say this: I unequivocally support this administration. This administration has been a great administration, not just a good one or an average, but a great administration. If you are a person who have been paying attention, if you have been studying, then you know that this administration has passed landmark legislation and has passed or made executive decisions that opens up opportunities for people at the bottom and in the middle that previous administrations had locked out. We're going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about it in greater detail. I'll be having more podcasts talking specifically about the measures, the policies that were passed as a result of this administration that are going to impact the lives and livelihood of Black people for decades. But those opportunities, if we act foolish because of rhetoric and because a lot of people don't get into the details, they don't study, they don't understand the policies, or they don't have that kind of interest, and they buy sound bites. And sound bites infuse or infuel their decisions. Well, I don't want your decisions to go ignorant. I don't want you to make decisions ignorant or devoid of the facts, not the fictions, not the fodder. But I, for one, I am supporting the Biden-Harris administration. I don't get any money from the Biden-Harris administration. I don't get any money from the DNC. I do this because I believe that this is the right thing for me to do. And certainly in this platform is to provide the facts, not the fiction, not the fodder, not some way out outlandish opinions because Joe Biden supported the 3-strike bill 30 years ago, which, by the way, more than 400 other congressional people and Black people who were running in Congress ran on it and doubled down on it. So this was a shared responsibility by just about everybody in Congress, with the exception of a few, and every Black person in Congress voted for it and ran on it. So you can table that argument because it doesn't have a lot of weight. But let's assume that that's legitimate. The argument is legitimate because it was a bad policy, but it was a bad policy that a lot of people signed on to. But here's an administration that, if redemption is certainly possible, this is an administration that certainly has earned some level of redemption in working very hard to ensure or to continue to do that work that's going to benefit Black families, Black people, Black communities, Black farmers, opportunity for Black businesses, Black HBCUs, which got $6.5 billion, and they are also owed billions of dollars from their states, that the Biden-Harris administration has sent out letters to those banks saying, give them their money. FAMU, Florida A&M, is owed $2 billion. Tennessee State is owed $2 billion. this administration is doing what it needs to do. Now, we're going to talk about that later, but let me get into what happened here that I woke up to this morning, that I actually thought that I was dreaming when I heard it and fogged in my eyes. Today happens to be my 3rd wedding anniversary to my beautiful and lovely wife, Rosie, who is not feeling very well. We went away to my town reunion over the weekend, celebrated with our family. And but she has developed some sort of cold virus, and so she's not feeling the best. So I'm having to celebrate with her. She's in bed resting, but she'll be okay. But let me just say that I was in bed watching the news, and this slain police officer who was murdered last week on his way home from work, 30-year-old police officer. And today was the celebration of life for that slain police officer. And the news announced that the family of the slain police officer asked for the mayor of the city of Chicago, who is Brandon Johnson, who represents that office, the mayor of the city of Chicago, the family, asked for the mayor of the city of Chicago not to attend a slain Chicago police officer funeral. The mayor of the city of Chicago was asked not to attend the slain Chicago police officer's funeral today. Now, I have to check this fact, or fact check me. If somebody knows, please let me know. Let me know. If it is true, and I still have to find it out, that the mayor of the city of Chicago went to the family's home, and that the mayor was received with open arms. I don't know that to be a fact, but that information was fed to me by someone that I have to double check. So I'm not saying that that happened, but that is what I'm being told. That notwithstanding, the mayor of the city of Chicago, who is the CEO, the mayor of the city of Chicago, who is responsible for the Chicago Police Department, who hired the superintendent that the Fraternal Order of Police wanted in Larry Schnellen, the mayor of the city of Chicago was told by the family, or sent a message by the family, that they did not want for the mayor to come to the slain Chicago police officer's funeral. So the office of the mayor of the city of Chicago was asked not to be in representation of a slain Chicago police officer. The first time in the history of this city where a police officer was killed, that the mayor's office was not represented by the mayor of the city of Chicago, because the family asked for the mayor not to attend the services. As tragic and as brutal, and I pray that the right person who committed this heinous act is apprehended, and that person is held accountable for their action. I know I am beyond frustrated and tired of having to send out warm thoughts and prayers because somebody died by the killers at the hands of someone who had easy access to a gun to commit such a heinous act upon a city of Chicago police officer who was on his way home from serving our city, from serving and protecting our city, and he never made it home because someone had access to a gun and the intent to go out to commit harm, murdered a city of police officer. I am sick and tired of having to give out thoughts and prayers to a family that's not going to help because they're not getting their loved one back. This is a separate issue. I think that it is reprehensible for someone to suggest to the family that they should not want for the mayor of the city of Chicago to represent the office at their family's funeral services of their fallen family member who was a city of Chicago police officer. This is completely inappropriate, in my opinion. It is also, in my opinion, that it was not the idea of this family to suggest such a thing. I believe that this idea came from someone with political motivation that suggested to the family to reject the mayor of the city of Chicago, to send a political statement. So they politicized their fallen family member's murder, and they fell right into it. Nobody is going to convince me that this family thought of that on their own. It is politically motivated, it is a political position, and it is reprehensible that this young man's life, this young man's murder, would be used as a platform for political retaliation. It is disgusting, regardless of what you may feel, think, or believe about Brandon Johnson, the person. The mayor of the city of Chicago should have been front row and center representing the city of Chicago's highest office at one of the worst times to show support for the police officer who has been murdered and the family. And someone thought that it would be a great political position to take the office of the mayor and to take swipes at Brandon Johnson, who happens to be the mayor representing the office of the mayor at a time where a young 30-year-old police officer never made it because he was murdered. And they're using this as a political opportunity. It is beyond reprehensible. It is beyond disgusting. Shame on all of those who participated in stepping on the murder and the falling and the death of this young man, whether it be family members, whether it be political operatives, whomever it was. This was not right. And this is not what you're going to call trauma or use trauma as an excuse. To suggest that the mayor of the city of Chicago, who represents the highest office in the city of Chicago, should not come to the services was beyond disgusting. And I hope that the mainstream media, the local news, the local police, the local political investigators would dig into this and find the link to the person and the persons who crafted and suggested such a disgusting, despicable act at a time such as this, because it was definitely not this family's brain thrust at a tragic time of their life to come up with such political disgust. It was not. You will never, ever convince me, for one, that the family of this young man thought this up as an ingenious idea that we're going to send a statement to the mayor. And the statement that you're sending was what? What was the point of it? What is the mission behind the point? If you want to send a statement, how about sending a real statement to the gatekeepers who would like to see our communities flooded with the carnage of guns? Who thinks that it is okay for anybody who is breathing to have access to a gun? The real problem is that we should be holding those persons accountable that don't want for there to be any type of gun reform whatsoever. That we should be, just as the movies portray, the wild west, and anybody can walk around with a gun, and the more people who have access to guns means the more people who shouldn't have access to them will have easier access to them. to commit more of the heinous crime. So if you really, whoever you are, wanted to make a political statement and you wanted to use the tragic death and murder of a Chicago police officer as your platform to stand on the dead body of a police officer who was murdered, for you to voice your vitriol in your political position, what a coward you are that you would cause and you would engage a family to use their dead family members, their murdered family members, this tragedy for your political movement. How pathetic you are. And I don't take a word of it back. I will stand on it because I know that this was not the brain thrust of this family, that somehow through the carnage, through the hurt, through the tears and the loss of their family member to gun violence, somehow had the wherewithal to suggest that this would be a good idea to say to the office of the mayor of the city of Chicago, don't come. We don't want the office of the mayor represented at our son's, our brother, at our cousin's funeral. We don't want the office of the mayor's represented at his funeral. For the first time in history, to suggest that the mayor had something to do with this tragedy, that somehow the mayor is responsible for the slain police officer's death. No. No. This will not go unaddressed. If no one else addresses this disgusting act, this pathetic position that someone convinced this family to participate in, and I say shame on the family for acquiescing to this. What is the benefit? What is the benefit of this? It is the mayor of the city of Chicago that has to sign off on all of the services that were rendered through the Chicago police, through the Chicago Fire Department, through the Chicago Streets and Sanitation, to the Chicago Transportation. And you wanted to use the tragic death of this police officer as a platform for your political, pathetic agenda. It is astonishing. It is amazing. It is disgusting. And I want for the persons who were behind this, because I have a real strong opinion about who I believe is behind it. There are certain people who take positions within the Fraternal Order of Police. And I believe that there are some people within the body of the Fraternal Order of Police that has something to do with this. And I hope that channel 2, 5, 7, 9, 32, the Crusader, the Defender, the Sun-Times, the Tribune, the Reader, Politico, I hope they all are investigating how this came about and who it was, the brain thrust behind it, because it didn't start with that family. It did not start with that family. That they would disregard, denigrate this young man's murder by denigrating the mayor of the city of Chicago and the office of the mayor of the city of Chicago. At a tragic time when the mayor's office must and are supposed to be front and center, representing the mayor's office of the city of Chicago, showing the support from the mayor's office to the family and to every other falling officer and to every police officer that remains with us, who are faced with this every day that they go to work. And some disgusting individual would use as the thematic thrust of their pitiful, pathetic political agenda this young man's death. As the stage for that agenda. I will call and I will send an email tomorrow morning. I will send a statement out to every local news media and national news media outlet that for the first time in the history of this city, that a fallen police officer, that the family told the mayor, we don't want you to come to represent the office of the mayor of the city of Chicago. We don't want you in attendance. Why? Why? In 150 years, that you have someone who has said to this family, we think that this would be an opportunity for you to speak out, to use your dead family member's death, this tragedy as a platform to express and to perpetrate and to advance your political agenda. And whoever that person was stood on the death and the murder of your family members with not an inkling of sensitivity or compassion, just motivated by whatever their political agenda is, as disgusting as it is. I hope, and I will try to do whatever I can to get the media to use whatever resources they can to find out who was behind this agenda, because it was not the brain thrust and the thematic thrust of this family. It was not. You will never convince me that this was. Chicago Tribune, the Chicago Sun-Times, CBS, NBC, ABC, WGN, Fox 32, WTTW, WCIU, and the rest of you. You should all be working tirelessly to find out who was it that would do such a reprehensible thing. Sorry about that. We had some technical issues there. We're having some technical issues here. I'll have to check this out and find out because we're having this. But let me just say this. Let me say this. For everybody who is watching, everybody who is listening, this was completely wrong. And this is not even about Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson happens to be there. But I'm going to tell you, more than disrespecting Brandon Johnson, you disrespected the office that he represents and the family participating in this and agreeing to this. You dishonored your falling family members. You dishonored your falling family members' service by going along with this. At some point, all of us When you're in public service, when you have the responsibility and there are people who trust you, there are people who look to you for guidance, you have a great, not just some, but you have a great responsibility to make sure that you are providing the people who trust you, that they make decisions based on information that you provide them. You have an extraordinary responsibility to get it right. Not a reasonable responsibility, but an extraordinary responsibility to get it right. Despite whatever monies you may or may not get, your first and character, courage, or conscience. Check your motives for whatever it is that you are doing before you do it. And if you've got any type of character, any type of consciousness, or any type of courage or discipline, if you know that it is not the right thing to do, you will check yourself and adjust to not doing it. Now, we can't leave this out as part of the motivation. The fact that we have a black mayor, the third, Mayor Washington, Eugene Sawyer, Lori Lightfoot, well, actually the fourth. The fourth black mayor. There are gatekeepers who will buy some Negroes who have said, you all have had enough of a run, and they now have their state's attorney candidate, and they're going to have a white person back in that space, back in that office. Now, they don't care much whether it is Eileen Burke or whether it is Bob Fioretti, as long as they're white. Because there are people out there who have said and are saying that you black folks, you've had the position. We don't like the fact that you had the position and you got too many positions and you got enough. We're taking them back. And they're using every and will use every tactic that they can to take it back. Now, they have the state's attorney's office. They want to go after the mayor, the mayor's office. We got our white state's attorney. We're going to get our white mayor. This is the objective of a certain set of people within the city of Chicago and without that want for that office to be represented by a white face. They want for that office to be represented. They want for the Attorney General's office to be represented. They want for all of these offices to be represented by white faces. There is that thrust. And they will go out and they will buy them some black folks. No, I'm sorry. They will buy them some, and you never heard me say this, but I'm going to say it tonight. They will buy them some preacher niggas. They will buy them some. They're going to do everything that they can. Because there are some people who will sell their soul for a bowl of beans. And I use that pejorative because I have reached a boiling point, to be metaphorically speaking. Now, either we don't know what's going on and we don't see it, or we do. There is no in the middle, gray, not sure. We know or we don't. The reason why I say you know or you don't, because you got an opinion about everything, but you don't have actions about everything. So these gatekeepers, I will be happy to shed some names. Of people who have been gatekeepers, who have profited from being gatekeepers. And it is not that only white people will buy them some gatekeeping Negroes. I'm not even going to call them Negroes because, you know, it was once said that by C.S. Lewis, who said one time, I'm going back to being a Negro. Because when we were Negroes, he said, we bought large tracts of land. We struggled together. We bled together. We died together. Since we become African American, we have lost sight of what our true representation and the mission and what the fight was all about, is all about. The civil rights movement is not of the 1960s. The civil rights movement is of 2024, and it continues. So these people who are in positions and get in positions to be quiet, some preachers that get called for board memberships will all of a sudden become as quiet as church mouse. You won't hear a thing from them. They won't hold the mayor accountable. They won't hold anybody accountable because they got picked off for a bowl of beans, and they will compromise their entire community, get up in their pulpits and preach these thunderous, faith-centered, Christ courage messages for about an hour and a half, take up an offering, and go back to kowtowing on Monday. And we'll call the roll for you. If you don't know, we'll call the roll for you, and we'll let you know who the gatekeepers are. So all of you people who are getting board positions, I hope that you get these board positions to go in on these boards to be a voice for transformation for your people. If you don't, then we have to call the roll. We have to call the roll. I noticed that Brandon Johnson has called Ira Ackery and Pastor Edie, who will soon be my neighbor, to serve on the RTA and the CTA boards. I hope that their voices will be just as thunderous and effective in those boardrooms for Black people as they are on Sunday morning in their pulpits. I hope that they can raise money for Black people on those boards like they raise from Black people in their pulpits. I hope Ira Ackery and Pastor Edie, I hope that you have a real agenda for the communities. I know you both. I want to be supportive, but I'm also going to be watching, and I'm also going to be paying attention, because we do not have any more time for symbolism. I, for one, am fed up with Black symbolism and no substance. Period. I don't want to hear about what you all are doing or they all are doing. We want to see it manifesting in the communities where our people need it. That's what we want to see. So if you're going on the board just so that you can say, I'm on the board, and being on the board, that you're not using the power that you have been given. If you can't go into that boardroom and speak transformationally in the boardroom like you do in the pulpit, we are going to be watching. Oh yeah, I read the articles. I paid attention to the articles. And I say, congratulations. I say, congratulations to you. Now, for you just to get some position on the board, that ain't no big deal for you to just go on the board with some position. The big deal is go on the board and see that your voice transcend and transform those boardrooms to be substance in our community, that you're able to get billions of those dollars poured into our communities, invested into our communities, where we have all of this disparate treatment, for you to just on a board and you go in and check a box and check in. We're not getting excited about that. I'm not getting excited about that. I'm not getting excited about you going on a board. I don't care that it's Brandon Johnson who has appointed you. What I care about is that appointment to that board. You have a much greater responsibility. So don't get comfortable in the big leather seat and with all the other perks. So I expect for you to roll up your sleeves and to be very uncomfortable in the seat. Uncomfortable that you are not delivering. Uncomfortable making sure that you're delivering for your people. Not to be a gatekeeper for those who are divesting or for the agenda of somebody else. Symbolism won't cut it. We're not getting excited because you got on the board. You're on the board. What we're going to get excited about is when you deliver by being on that board. You going on the board is a calling to delivering for your people. We're not interested in you coming back and saying, well, you know, it's just one or two of us. Somewhere I hear preachers say all the time, repeat scripture all the time, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. Where is that faith? With just 1 or 2 of you. Jesus didn't need a whole army. And I would imagine that you going on that board, not to acquiesce, but to transcend and to transform. Now, those are just the latest 2, but some would ask, why are you so hard on the Black representatives? Now, let me say this. I want for every Black representative in public spaces to be successful. Every one of them. Whether you're an alderman, whether you're a commissioner, whether you're a mayor, whether you're a state rep, state senator, United States congressperson, United States senator, attorney general, state's attorney, water reclamation commissioner, commissioner of the fire department, commissioner over the police department, commissioner this, treasurer, commissioner that. I want for every one of you to be successful. And you know how I measure success? I measure your success by how you are delivering for the people who put you there, for the Black community who put you there. Black people in public offices, you are elected by Black people to be representative of equity for Black people. Now, don't misunderstand. This is not about being anti-anybody. So let me just dispel all that nonsense. This is not about being anti-anybody, because I no more support bigotry and prejudice from Black people any more than I accept it from a white person or a Hispanic person. I'm going to call you out on it. And there is no such thing as a Black racist. There is no such thing as a Black racist, which is why I didn't use the term. I know that people use this all the time and talking about reverse racism. You can't be racist going forward or in reverse, because you don't have the power and you don't have the privilege that it takes for you to do to a people like the people who have the privilege and the power have done to Black people. So there is no such thing as a Black racist. So let's just get that clear. Now, we can be bigoted and prejudiced. Absolutely. But that's all you can be, is big or prejudice. And you shouldn't be either of those. But we have our biases. We have our prejudice. But you do not have the privilege and the power. So in order to be a racist, you have to have the privilege plus the power plus the prejudice in order to be a racist. So Black folks don't have privilege and Black folks don't have the power to do to white folks what white folks have done to Black folks. So now we're clear on that. So what I am talking about is not about being anti-anyone. I think that somehow Black people get into office and somehow think that they have to overly compensate to show other groups that they want to be fair. Let me just say this. You were not elected by any other group other than Black people to go to those offices to be representative of equity for Black people. That's not being anti-anybody. That's just being pro the people who sent you and hired you to go to those offices to represent bringing equity back to the communities that elected you. You have got it confused. And we are confused if we continue to allow for this to happen. Here we sit with a Black mayor of the city of Chicago, 20 Black aldermen, 6 Black Cook County commissioners, a Black Cook County board president, a Black attorney general, a Black state's attorney, a Black city treasurer, a Black lieutenant governor, 22 Black state representatives, 10 Black state senators, 4 Black United States congresspeople, 17 black mayors in the southern suburbs, a black president of the Water Reclamation Commission, 193 black people in elected positions of power in the state of Illinois that does not exist in any other state in the United States of America. Yet, in the city of Chicago, we have 47% unemployment of black males between the ages of 18 to 25, and they're out of school. So they're out of work and they're out of school. 47% to their white male counterparts at 6%. Black women represent 16% of the population. Black women are 30% of victims of all crimes reported in the city of Chicago. Dorothy Tucker just did a special about that, aired on last Thursday, 90 minutes. Had a special meeting over at the Trinity United Church of Christ. Black men, we have work to do, and we've got to stand up, and we've got to do more to ensure that our communities, that our women and our girls are protected. Because those numbers suggest that black women are dispensable. That cannot be our reality. Now, so I started out by saying I want for every black representative in public office to be successful. Your success is only measured by what you deliver to the constituents that you're supposed to be representing. And black representatives understand this. Just because you're serving in the city council or just because you're serving on the Cook County Board doesn't mean that that is the only thing that you're concerned about. You have to understand that our numbers are not the numbers of your white counterparts. You don't have the privilege and the power of your white counterparts. That means that you must collaborate across your public offices, across your districts. When you vote on a policy, you don't just vote on a policy for your little patch of grass. You vote on a policy that everybody will have to adhere to. So that means that you must collaborate and collateralize the resources, whether it be from the city council, whether it be from the Cook County Board, whether it be from the state, whether it be from your congressional offices or your senatorial offices. We have to connect wherever it is that we are. So while you're in positions of power, you have no power if you are standing alone. If you're trying to do this individually, you have no power. And we see the results of that by looking at the conditions of where we live, the conditions of our community. There has been no collaboration on the part of black representatives. We do not have a black caucus. We have a black carcass. And until that carcass, the dry bones of that carcass are resuscitated, and they will only be resuscitated by cross collaboration and cross collateralization of your offices. Anything less than that, you are never going to be able to deliver what needs to be delivered for the transformation of black communities. period. I have said this before. With all of these positions that you are in, you have never met to put together an agenda locally, regionally, or state for that matter. You have never met to do it. And you make up all kinds of excuses why not to do it. I remember asking the question when Sandy Jackson was the mayor of the 7th Ward. Sandy Jackson's office was at 71st Street and Yates. Leslie Hairston was the mayor of the 5th Ward, and her office was at 71st and Oglesby. They were 2 blocks from each other. And I asked Leslie Hairston a question. Have you ever met with Sandy Jackson? Have you all ever met? Her response to me was, why should we do that? I'm not the alderman of that ward. She's not the alderman of my ward. Why should we meet? That was the response that I got back then. Now, neither one of them are in office at this point. Leslie Hairston didn't run for re-election, retired. Unfortunately, Sandy Jackson, tragic, had to leave office. But the point is that somehow they thought that this was not a good idea. I don't know where that comes from. I have no idea where that kind of thinking comes from. It is a sickness that we have to overcome. Now, I'm going to talk about what we have to do as voters and as constituents. I'm not going to get to that tonight. Maybe I might, if I have time. I might, but it's really not on the rundown to talk about this. So, you as representatives that we voted for and put you there and hired you, you are not hired by a white constituents. You are not. White people largely vote for white people. Black people, when they can, largely vote for their black representatives. That's the way it's set up in Chicago. Black communities elect black representatives. We live largely in 20 black wards. We have 20 black alder people. In the city council, we have the black mayor. Now, the mayor has to get a certain representation from most communities, but he certainly has to get a large representation from the black community. He can't become the mayor without it. So I don't know why it is so hard for we, the black community, to get this point. Now, unless, as Al Sharpton put it, there is some sort of sanitizer that Black representatives have to go through when they leave the South or West Side and head towards downtown and gets into downtown, either there is some sort of sanitizer that makes them lose their Blackness. Either that exists, or they don't understand that the importance of you having to collaborate with the other aldermen who look like you. Now, I heard David Moore on the radio last week. I want to say Wednesday. He was on the radio Wednesday talking about not hard for them to get 26 votes. Not hard for them to get 26 votes. It's not hard for them to get 26 votes. You need 26 votes in order to pass anything. They couldn't get 26 votes. So if what he's saying is true, then they didn't want to get 26 votes to do away with the policy that is disproportionately disenfranchising Black communities. So they're okay with this policy in place of red light cameras and speed cameras, which do not provide the kinds of safety results that they like to tout and that they like to lie to us about on their website, because it generates easily millions and millions of dollars for which we have no idea how much the city retains and how much we pay out to a private company. We've been trying to get the contracts to find out who are these contractors, who are the subs, who are the minority participants. They don't want us to know that information. We've been trying to FOIA those contracts for years. But my point is, he said last Wednesday that they could get 26 votes easily. That's what he said. Well, if that's the case, why can't they get 26 votes to pass a measure to make sure that there are billions of dollars invested in Black communities on the south and west sides of Chicago, to get 26 votes to make sure that we bring an economic development team to bring industry in to the South land and the south side of Chicago, the southwest side of Chicago, the west side of Chicago, where Black people can participate in these jobs and in manufacturing, that industries are building these projects, 46,000 of them, as a result of Biden-Harris policies, CHIPS and Science Act. Why can't they get votes to make sure that we have billions of dollars that are building our own industries, or bringing industries to the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago, where thousands of people can get jobs in these manufacturing positions that now the average starting salary in a manufacturing company is $89,000 a year. Why can't we get 26 votes to put together a real urban planning department that will make sure that these developments have some interlinking connection rather than these one-offs, putting a Starbucks here and a Starbucks there that will do nothing in terms of moving the socioeconomic conditions of our communities. You can't get 26 votes to see that there's a $2.5 billion infrastructure improvement for industry on the south and west side of Chicago, where in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, that 70% of all Black employment was in labor. Ronald Reagan came into office and decimated that. And there hasn't been a plan since, not a cohesive plan, urban plan since. We don't have a real planning department. Why can't we get 26 votes to bring in a real, experienced, qualified urban planner? He says it's easy to get 26 votes. I don't think that they know what to get 26 votes for. I don't think that they have an agenda with a bold, bountiful, longevity plan to transform Black communities. I don't think that they know what to do, what to get 26 votes for. To talk about bringing these little offshoots of a couple of $1 million to their community with a few chickens, and somehow people are supposed to be excited about that. No, we need billions of dollars invested in the communities that our people are stuck in and disenfranchised in. And we don't mind being stuck as long as our communities can thrive, just like the other communities are in the city of Chicago. What good is it for us to pay aldermen 130, 110, 140, 150,000, whatever the number is, for them to arrogate themselves and not come and speak to the people in the community about measures and about agendas and about policies that they are voting on and determining for people in our communities? What is that all about? That you don't talk to us? You don't have any communications with us. You don't come and talk to us. You don't have, in fact, you should be having joint sessions. You have to think regionally. Here it is, a project that will transform the Black communities on the Southland and on the south side of Chicago. The South Suburban Airport, which we have been told by aviation experts that our airports are underperforming because they have no capacity to expand. All they do and they can do is to refurbish what is there. They don't have the capacity to bring in any more planes. They don't have the capacity to expand. All they're doing is cramming more people on planes. And the South Suburban Airport that will bring in thousands of jobs. There are 42,000 people that work at O'Hare Airport. Imagine if we didn't have O'Hare Airport, which people opposed when the first daily wanted to do the airport, and he went and built it anyway. We're 90% there with the South Suburban Airport. And because the representation that we have, they are limited in their capacity of imagining a regional thinking. They're limited to their little space where they were elected to think that that is the only space that they needed to be concerned about. But when you vote on a policy, you don't just vote on a policy for your ward. You vote on a policy that impacts the entire city of Chicago. We expect for you to do differently. We expect for you to do more, much more. I expect for you to do more, and I want you to be successful. And being successful means that you are representing gigantuar projects, resources, and investment for the transformation of Black communities. The best and fastest way to a safe, secure community is through an economically strong community, meaning that the people that you all call Pookie and Ray Ray has an opportunity to get a job earning $80,000, $90,000 a year to provide for himself, his children, his family, and to be a law-abiding taxpayer. Anybody with a good paying job is not likely to be hustling on the streets, slinging a gun so that they can provide for themselves. That's what we need to be thinking. That's real public safety. Public safety is not more police. Public safety is not even community policing. That's not public safety. Public safety is making sure that the public in those communities have a great access and opportunity to provide for themselves with a good paying job. That is public safety. It's not rocket science. It's a will. It's either you have a will to do it or you won't do it. There is no can't. There's a will or there's a won't. That's it. If it is a can't, you shouldn't be in that position. Resign. If you can't get it done, resign and give us our job back. No employer hires a person and pays them $110,000, $140,000 a year to come back every year and say, boss, I can't do it, and still keep your job. That does not happen. Except for with us as voters, as we keep sending people back who maybe not tell us in words that they can't, but certainly show us in deeds or non-deeds that they can't, and we keep sending them back. That is the change. All right, going into this last half hour, I went home to my home city where I was born and raised. Where I was raised. I wasn't born in Richmond Heights. I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital. I was raised in a little town called Richmond Heights, Florida, which was a town that was built for military Black veterans in the late 1940s, after World War II, by a retired force pilot by the name of Crawford Martin, a white man, who saw that They were building some substandard houses in a town called Opelika in Miami, which is not that far from the airport, which is about 20 or 30 minutes north of Richmond Heights. And so Frank Crawford Martin thought that these black men and women served in the military and deserved better than what he saw. So Frank Crawford Martin went and got a grant, bought the land, which part of it was an Army base. It was called the Richmond something base, which is now it's called Richmond Heights. And he built these homes, built this town, donated the land to the churches, donated the land to the elementary school, which is named after Mr. Martin, Frank C., which is right across our home. Richmond Heights Junior High is on the other side of the community. Both of the schools have expanded. So he built this town for military black veterans. So we grew up in this town, and as children, we just grew up in this community with no knowledge, never being taught the history while we were in school. Even at the elementary school named after Frank C. Martin, we just knew it was Frank C. Martin. We went there. We never asked any questions. We were never given any information as to who Frank Crawford Martin was. Not in grade school, which is elementary school, not in junior high, not in high school. Our high school was not in Richmond Heights. It was in a nearby community, white community. But we were never taught the history of how it became that we were in these towns. So there were three, not connected by land, but communities that we lived in that were predominantly black. Richmond Heights being one, Perrine being one, Goulds, Goulds being one. These were communities that we were connected to, but not contiguous communities, but because they were predominantly black communities. So we grew up in these towns. Richmond Heights was considered to be one of the strongest middle-class black communities that always ended up being one of the top voting precincts in the country. 67% to 70% voter turnout every election. Our parents and other adults in the community were school teachers that lived there. They were Little League coaches, school teachers by day, Little League coaches after school. They were our band directors. They are our science teachers, black. And we had our own pharmacist. We had our own drugstore. We had black folks who owned the gas stations. We had 2 gas stations. We had a 7-Eleven. We had a chop store, butcher shop, barber shop. Pretty self-contained little community that was 100% black, built for black folks by a white retired Air Force pilot by the name of Frank Crawford Martin. We call him Frank C. Martin. Frank C. Martin was killed in a car crash on his way to the development at the age of, I believe it was 45 years of age. We didn't learn this history until our adult years. But we had a stalwart of community stakeholders, our parents and other elders in the community that whenever that community rose up, I don't care who the mayor was, I don't care who the city manager was, I don't care who the commissioners were, the state reps, they'd better show up. And they did. We have a public park. Now, fast forward to 1994. Hurricane Andrew hits, devastated communities in the Southland. Some people took their insurance dollars, sold their properties, and left. Now, something happened. South Americans started buying every home that was for sale. This has been going on for the last 30 years in Richmond Heights. We have a pretty decent amount of South American, Hispanic homeowners in Richmond Heights now. Someone came up with the ingenious idea. Avery Washington, Thomas Plah came up with the idea of having a Heights One Love reunion, like a one big family reunion. They started this back in, I believe it was 2010, 11, somewhere around there, 09. I didn't find out about it until, I guess, about 2016, 17, 18, somewhere around there. But I kept missing the dates. But I finally attended one in 2020, which was the first time that I attended one. And it happened, the scheduled date was the second week of February. And of course, that was the year that COVID hit. So it was actually the last function that they had because everything had to be locked down. I, made it back home to Chicago. So then for 2 years, they couldn't have it because of the pandemic. Then 2023, last year, they were able to revive it and have it. It was a great, great celebration. It is just a phenomenal thing to go back and to have this reunion, this wonderful time out in the public park. Our park, which was Richmond Heights Park, now called Sergeant Joseph Delancey, who was a police officer that was killed in the line of duty. So it's called the Joseph Delancey Richmond Heights Park. And so that's where we have this reunion. So I went 2020, 2023, and I look forward to it every year, almost like a kid looking forward to Christmas. Because as I get older, I love the idea of being able to reconnect with people that I grew up with, understanding what the importance of that was, what it meant. Of course, we didn't know it at the time, but having history to recall and the significance that the community that we lived and what our parents invested in. So we all come together. So a couple of things have happened. So other communities started doing it, Perrine, Goulds. They all have reunions. I don't know who was the first to start it. Doesn't really matter. But they all have their reunions. A couple of weeks ago, there was a reunion in West Perrine. And West Perrine had their reunion, and the reunion, according to reports, was great. It was wonderful. Now, we do have visitors who come from other places. The reunion. After the reunion, about an hour after the reunion, there was an altercation and there was a shooting. A couple of people were injured. Nobody lost their lives. A couple of people were injured. So somehow, because of some bad actors, the commissioner, the powers at B, decided they didn't call for community stakeholders to come to a meeting, but they decided that there would not be a Richmond Heights reunion. Now, mind you, this reunion is supposed to happen on the second week of February and had been happening on the second week of February every year that they had it. This year, Avery Washington and Thomas Plar working very hard trying to make this happen and getting pushback from the powers that be in the name of safety. So they basically want to tell us that we cannot have an event, we cannot operate, or we can't enjoy a public park under the disguise of safety. So it was on and off, on and off, on and off. I'm in contact, reaching out to Avery, hearing his frustration, his anguish. He calls me back and he says, hold on to your plans. Don't cancel anything yet. There's still a possibility I'm going to be meeting with the lieutenant. Now, so he met with the lieutenant. They came in and I said, look, if you're worried about some retaliation, and if you're telling us that you're shutting us down, shutting the park down, then they were going to have police security around an empty park to make sure that nobody went into the park, which made no sense. Now, Richmond Heights Park is probably one of the most easily secured parks because of how it sits in the community, that you can shut down all of the access points to prevent, or certainly to deter, anything that would happen. Now, mind you, we have never had an event, never had a problem before, during, or after at Richmond Heights One Love. Never. So I got to thinking that this is more than some idea of safety. Now, mind you, that the Commissioner McGee, is black. I don't know who the state representative is, but I'm assuming he's black or she's black. So I started writing Avery and really writing him to just express my thoughts of how he should convey this to the powers that be. One, that the police, the Chicago or the Miami-Dade Police Department has to be better resourced than a few bad actors. That the people who are citizens, that are law-abiding citizens, that want to participate and who want to enjoy these events, have to be deprived of enjoying these public spaces in the name of safety, under the disguise of safety. So it really made me start to think, you know, like to throw on my advocate, activist hat. of what is the motivation behind all of this. This is no way that you have a police department who says that they're not equipped to provide security to deter some would-be bad actors because of a few bad actors that had nothing to do with the event, but that these few bad actors are going to be the determiners of all of the other lawful citizens in Richmond Heights, Goulds, and Perrine. I really got to thinking about this. And I said that there's something else. Now, mind you, I told you that we have a number of, any house that goes up for sale right now in Richmond Heights is bought up by a South American Hispanic person. Okay, fine. We welcome them to come to our communities for the purpose of living and enjoying the rich culture of our community, not for the purposes of trying to erase and eradicate the culture of a community that was built for Black people. We welcome them in to buy homes, to participate and be integrated into the culture of the community, not to change the culture of the community. And it seems as though the representation of those communities are listening to and being influenced by people outside of the community, dictating to how the people inside of the communities, the taxpayers inside of the communities, the people who live there, can participate and not participate. So this conversation, not only a conversation that struck me, it struck other people. Now, there is a pastor in, he now lives in Homestead. Avery sent to me let me just pull it up here. He sent this to me, and okay, here it is. All right, so he sent this. All right, it's Anthony Ankrum Sr. All right, Anthony Ankrum Sr. So I looked him up. All right, I looked him up, and so Anthony is a pastor. On May 1st, they're having a community meeting because he, fed up, as he should be, along with some others. So they're having, it's the West Perrine Community Builders Association, Inc., is having a community meeting. And they're calling it Making West Perrine Great Again. And they have invited Commissioner Kiani McGee, Representative Kevin Chambliss, and some others to this meeting, and the more political officials. I don't know how many are going to show up. I've been tempted to book. I've been tempted to book a flight to be a part of that meeting And because I still have a home there, we have a family home there. This is my dog barking. Shiloh, cut it out. Stop it. So, but my point is that even though our populations in Miami, or the populations in Richmond Heights, the populations in Perrine, the Black populations in Goulds are much smaller, these voices in these communities will not go unheard. And that is what we must do. We have to organize. We must organize Black voices together, not on a one-off, but to institutionalize our voices so that the people in these public spaces and these public offices can no longer take us for granted, can no longer make decisions for us without us being involved, making decisions for or against us without our involvement. Now, here in Chicago, which is why we are building, we are institutionalizing, and we have to build the voting block, because the voting block has to deal with all of these issues. It is the only way that we have power to transform and transcend these inequitable, disparate conditions that are being forced upon our communities. They know that we're disorganized and they treat us as such. So we have realized that it is only by being an organized people will we liberate ourselves. So I say to the people in Richmond Heights, my home community, West Perrine, still considered my community, Goulds, still considered my community, that we need to organize down there 10 by 10, just as we are organizing here in Chicago and Cook County in the state of Illinois, 10 by 10. 10 people, getting 10 people, do that 5 times over. Now, we don't have 1 million people in the Black community in Miami, but we certainly have enough. I don't know what the demographics are, but it is imperative that we organize wherever we live, wherever we are, that we organize our voices together, because our voices are needed and they cannot be ignored. The reason why they can't be ignored is because we have influence. So therefore, it is important that we organize to strengthen our voices. So I am saying, and I hope that some of my family members from down in Miami are paying attention to tonight's program. Let's organize, because what happened this past week, now we had a very good time on the park, not an ounce of any problems, which we've never had. We had a great time, but it should have been larger. More people should have participated. And we will not stand for public representatives to allow for people who don't look like us to make all decisions or decisions for us, saying what we can and can't do and when we can and can't go into public spaces. Pastor Ankrum, who is Anthony Ankrum, who is moderating and facilitating that meeting. I'm going to have him on the program, as well as Avery Washington. This is more than just having an event. This is about preserving the rich history that we have, and also making sure that we have access to our public spaces like anybody else, and that they're not going to use some people, some bad actors, as a backdrop of an excuse to tell us that we can't use our public spaces. No, not legitimate, law-abiding taxpayers. Who live in these communities are outside people going to tell us when and when we cannot utilize our public spaces. Now look, we're not going to tolerate that. No. That's not going to be. We're not going to tolerate that. Now look, we're coming up towards the end of the program, and I just want to be on these last few moments that we have. Look for some more shows. I told you I'm going to be doing plenty of shows talking about what's happening within the Joseph Biden and the Kamala Harris administration, the great work that they have done for the past 4 years, and why we have to continue that work. I'm going to talk about the facts of that coming up in programs. So make sure that you tune in. CBS, NBC, ABC, WGN, and Fox. Find out who the culprit behind getting the family to tell the mayor not to attend the slain Chicago police officer's funeral. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you all for tuning in to the Monday night edition of The People Show on intellectualradio.com. We'll be right back here at the same place, the same time, next Monday night. Intellectualradio.com, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. That's all. See you tomorrow.